answers to the moral dilemmas of our time. I have not seen or heard an intelligent response to that question, and remain unconvinced by the doctrinal manipulators that pass as the religious community. In my opinion, faith as advertised by the Bible and the religious carries even less weight, and I dismiss it out of hand. Faith is the lazy way out. It stifles inquiry and applauds ignorance. I don't care to have faith in the authenticity of the Bible or the Word of God. I'd rather know if my premises and beliefs are true and or accurate. You are certainly free to believe what you may, but that doesn't make it so, no matter how much you may wish that to be the case. Our different outlooks on faith, religion, and what part it will play in our lives and the lives of our children was the elephant in the room that we would not discuss, and a fatal point of contention between me and Renee throughout the years described in this book. So where does Pastor Dean fit in this picture? I had a good relationship with him. He knew me as Renee's husband and father of our 2 girls. He knew all our intimate family details, and I believe about some of the struggles we're having, and it remained in our lives the whole time. In 2007, my situation with Renee deteriorated even further when, out of the blue, she decided that I was spending too much time at work and therefore must be cheating on her. That, of course, would be the only explanation for working long hours. It was very clearly so, or so she believed. She could have asked me, and I would have told her what was really happening, but that makes way too much sense. Why she would even care is a matter for another book, intriguing as it is to me. We no longer had what might be thought of as a healthy husband and wife relationship, and in fact hadn't had one for several years. We fought constantly about most everything. My being at home or not was completely irrelevant as far as I was concerned. This little detail apparently escaped Renee. She harassed me in my workplace constantly, made unfounded and unflattering accusations about my work colleagues, and telephoned sometimes 10 to 15 times a day, all the time, every day, for weeks on end. I will never understand her compulsion on this matter. I have no idea why she felt that calling my work repeatedly and accusing me of carrying on workplace affairs was an intelligent use of her time. She felt vindicated in some manner, repeating her facts as she saw them, over and over, but was incredibly and unbelievably totally silent to me when I did get home. It was completely bonkers. I was so disturbed and disgusted by Renee's behavior at the time that part of me wished I was indeed having the affairs she imagined. At least there would be a basis for all the madness around me. Who has 2 affairs that work concurrently anyway? How do you even pull that off? I have serious doubts that even Don Juan could have done so. It did not make any sense. I was thoroughly convinced that Renee's compulsion on this matter was a bona fide mental disorder. I found her conduct profoundly baffling, bewildering, and downright crazy. I never quite understood what was motivating her delusions. It was mind-boggling trying to make any sense of it all, and I gave up trying. In retrospect, I have since come to believe that some of her motivation may have been because she found truth and vindication, repeating her accusations and or opinions to me, the intended target, as an attempt to hide her lack of material truth or evidence on the matter. Who needs truth or evidence when there is so much fervor? It is not unlike the religion that she so nakedly espoused. I was and remain persuaded that Renee should have sought professional help to get to the bottom of some of these behaviors. To this day, I'm at a complete loss to explain why she acted the way she did, and say the things she did. She should have known her bizarre and completely crazy accusations had no basis in fact or truth. I was not having two workplace affairs at the same time. I wasn't even having the one and would never do so, happy marriage or not. That is just not me. It seemed like I was stuck in the twilight zone. It was very disorienting. You say something long enough, you could be forgiven for believing it's true. That was Renee for you. She decided I was cheating on her, and no one was going to talk her out of it. She just knew this to be so. I remember one time, out of exasperation, I made the observation, what if you're wrong? Renee would have none of it. She snapped at me and talked herself into more accusational theatrics. I was never going to get through to her. It made no sense to even try. When both I and my receptionist at work would no longer take Renee's calls, she started sending paper faxes instead, written in very large bold print for all to see, with all kinds of incredible and unflattering accusations. It was unbelievable and extremely embarrassing. I was afraid that I was going to lose my job over this patently ridiculous situation that was extremely disruptive to our work environment. I owe a debt of gratitude to my boss, who used a lot of uncommon discretion to mitigate against the sideshow presented by Renee's conduct and behavior. A tragic circumstance all around. No exaggeration needed. When it became clear I could not reason with Renee, I called the one person I knew she respected, Pastor Dean. Pastor Dean, after hearing Renee's and my version of events concerning her accusations, decided to have an emergency crisis meeting. Renee was now threatening to physically come to my workplace during the day and have a disruptive shouting match with the supposed accused. Where she would find the time for this demented exercise was not made clear to me, but I believe she would do just that. How that would be a useful exercise in marital harmony is anyone's guess. Kind of hard to stay both employed and or married, I dare say. It was agreed by all that we would meet at a local restaurant and have a quiet dinner and talk through our differences. I decided I really had nothing more to lose, and indeed all I wanted to do at the time was a little peace and quiet, so I concurred. The details of our actual conversations escaped me, but Pastor Dean, who had brought Claire along, was very sympathetic and listened to Renee rehash her accusations yet again. A rather pointless exercise, in my opinion. There was really nothing else I could add, as I had already discussed this matter with him in exhaustive fashion. The whole affair was so surreal it bordered on theater. I wanted to laugh on more than one occasion. After Renee was done, Pastor Dean proceeded to call for calm reflection and emphasize the need for prayer. He felt we needed God to intervene on our behalf, perhaps allow us to move beyond our differences. I thought the entire exercise was a colossal waste of time. I'm sure Pastor Dean himself was not fully convinced it was going to help our particular situation any. Besides, the whole notion of a supreme being who sits around in the sky, waiting to hear us ask for solutions to personal problems, is, in my opinion, fanciful at best, deluded more appropriately. He explained how this wasn't good for the girls, who were now old enough to tell that something was really wrong. Amazing that he would even have to say that. I had told Renee repeatedly the same thing. She, on her part, was very passionate, very aggrieved, and very convinced that I was guilty, and grandiosely offered to forgive me and move on. I remember thinking that was real compassionate of her. I decided for my sanity to go along with Pastor Dean's advice to de-escalate our situation, and hoped the whole said affair would run its course, and it seemed to do just that. The obsessive phone calls were tapered down, eventually fizzling out, and a semblance of normalcy thankfully returned to our lives. Maybe Pastor Dean's prayers had worked. I doubt that very much. More than any other previous event, the events of 2007 decided for me without any doubt that Renee and I were done. I could not believe the incredibly fantastic accusations she was making. It clearly made no sense to anyone with any knowledge of the parties involved, including my work colleagues who were bewildered that they were sucked into this sideshow. I was at a complete loss and began to have genuine and serious doubts about Renee's mental faculties and her state of mind, even over and above our marital disagreements. Renee clearly needed to see someone, and I told her as much. Our situation was untenable, and it was indeed time to move beyond this madness. I did not appreciate having my job held hostage by her flights of fancy. The way Renee had comported herself through this entire episode was humiliating and eyebrow-raising, and I had many uncomfortable conversations with my work colleagues that Renee had accused, both of whom had healthy relationships of their own, to smooth things over. None of them were surprised, and as I recall, one or both were actually happy when I eventually filed for divorce. So was I. After our crisis boiled over, I, for the first time, started to make concrete plans to divorce Renee. The events of 2007 had made it very clear that my future with her was over. I did not want to remain part of that toxic and unhealthy situation, and I think even Pastor Dean was resigned to the same, as was made clear in the conversations I had with him subsequent to our crisis meeting. He kept praying we stayed together, even as it became clear there was no longer a viable and even reasonable course of action. Why pray at all? I might as well ask Zeus, Thor, the Easter Bunny, or even Santa for help. That is as useful an exercise. There is clearly no one out there. Absolutely no value to praying to imaginary and made-up deities dragged out from the Bronze Age and conceived by ignorant and superstitious primitives. It solves and does nothing. It would have been vastly better, in my estimation, to spend all that prayer time actually doing something about our toxic marriage. Pastor Dean and Renee did not get that memo, apparently. Once I filed for divorce from Renee in late 2010, I lost what communication I had with Pastor Dean. I know he remained involved in the lives of Renee and our two girls, and they continued to attend his church and have a relationship with his family. The next time I was to meet Pastor Dean was when our judge ordered a bifurcation hearing on whether my oldest daughter should be allowed to give verbal testimony regarding her desire to move to the new school that her mother had chosen for her. I presumed Pastor Dean came in to give moral support to Renee. He was also earmarked by Sam, Renee's lawyer, as a possible character witness if the judge allowed. I have no idea why that would be even appropriate under the circumstances. Pastor Dean could certainly send his kids to whatever school he chose. His opinion about which school I could send mine was irrelevant and presumptuous at best, and I dismissed it with the disdain it deserved. Thankfully, he was never introduced as a witness. It was, however, very clear then on which side of our situation his sympathies lay, and it was with Renee. Thrown out were the many intelligent, coherent, and sensible conversations I had had with him regarding our predicament. I have no idea what kind of dialogue he was now having with Renee, but I'm sure it was reinforcing her idea that she was the victim of our situation. It was written all over him. His demeanor said as much. I was so incredibly disappointed. I had thought he was above Renee's naked manipulation, and yet here he was, commiserating with Renee and Sam. I remember him looking in the direction of John, my lawyer, and me, he actually managed a